I'm a fan of fantasy, so I listen to Easy and Alan on their Just a Fantasy Fan podcast. Now here's Easy and Chris Allen.
That means it's another Wednesday night here at the Fantasy Fan Sportscast on the Sportscrew radio network. I am Easy, and the guy in Utah is...
It's just me. Nobody special.
Oh, nobody. I thought maybe, somebody special coming from Utah.
No.
You still have the sun and stuff in the background, see? So you're still somewhere where, you're obviously out west and I'm out east.
Yeah.
You can see behind me, it's dark. That's, so, well, again, thanks for coming on and being with me, even though you're out and about working and doing stuff. So,
of course.
Because again, we did have the first week of football.
Right.
Which means we had the first week of fantasy football.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, we have a lot to talk about. We probably won't even get into my normal jargon. We have a few followers now. So every once in a while, people do send me information. In the past, I just did what I wanted. But now people are saying, Easy, talk less. Chris needs to talk more. I think that means you know more than me. And
that cannot be true.
Okay. We know it is. Chris. I mean, you write for if it's a fantasy website with an article, Chris probably wrote every other one. That's all I got to say.
I do a lot.
Right. And I do a little. And actually, here's the problem with this show. I literally start taking notes down on like Sunday night and Monday night. But by the time Wednesday gets here, none of that matters because other stuff happens. So it's like, why do I mess around too much? So we will work on that. We will work on me talking less, you talking more. And maybe the people in Germany or wherever will, appreciate that. I don't know.
We'll see how it works out.
And see if you're prepared. I don't even know. And that's the point. Today, a lot of stuff happened. Things are going on. I'm not a fan of starting with the non-football stuff. But let's at least go with the person involved in that. We don't need to get into non-football stuff. But the end of last week, after our other show, and all that, I think it all kind of went down on Saturday afternoon. The Antonio Brown is no longer a Raider.
Right.
And is a Patriot.
Yes. Which
most weeks that would be the biggest news story.
Yeah.
And I really think for fantasy part, it really still is, right? I mean, the other part that's happening now is a little fantasy relevant because is he going to play or not? I'm pretty convinced right now he's going to play this week the way they're talking.
Yes.
So, the key now would be his value and some of that. But let's just go back to Saturday when he becomes a Patriot. What, as a fantasy analyst, what were you thinking? One, I think as soon as everyone cut him on Twitter, everyone said he's going to the Patriots. There wasn't even too much question there. But just give me your thoughts on when you read about it or saw it for the first time, what you thought fantasy wise it was going to do.
I was definitely of that same mindset. There was like very little doubt in my mind that the Patriots were going to sign him. So this was just like confirmation bias, 100%. But for the offense itself, do I think that he's going to wind up returning value on his like second, third round investment? I don't think so because he's already missed week one. It's going to take at least 1 week for him in order to get integrated into that offense. And then with the off the field stuff that we heard about from last night, it's hard for me to envision him getting on track. Like even if he plays this week, I don't see him putting up Antonio Brown numbers. It will probably take him at least 1 or 2 weeks in order to get integrated into the offense. So then we've got maybe 8 weeks of him performing at wide receiver 1 levels, maybe. So either way, I think the people that do take a hit though, like on that would be some of the ancillary receivers that we saw perform well in week 1 for the Patriots. So guys like Philip Dorsett, players like that we saw kind of come in and like perform well for the team. So that's really what but more, it's more and more of a, I guess, confidence in Tom Brady. That's really what it comes down to for me. It helps all the rest of the other receivers that we've already drafted, but really it's just if you drafted Tom Brady, you're loving it.
Well, Tom Brady to me is the one that gets the biggest bump.
Oh yeah.
I mean, in single quarterback leagues, he wasn't even being drafted in most good leagues. In some home leagues, he still was. There's people out there that just, Aunt Mary just says Tom Brady, I'll take him, just because it's a name. But in most higher end leagues, he wasn't being drafted. And now, he should end up with these weapons, a top 10 quarterback, you would think, right?
Yeah.
So I, in my mind, think no one else got hurt terribly. I'm assuming Edelman loses a few, but at the same time, Edelman's been good with other good wide receivers there because he's a different kind of a player. And like I said, the way the backfield was this week, obviously now we're going to go a day after all that happened. That was Saturday. On Sunday they played. I don't think anyone even saw Rex Burkhead. We knew he was on the team, but he was the one back not being drafted, and he's the one that got all the work. So, you know what? Right now, I am glad I have no Patriots on any team, and I do usually stay away.
Yeah.
And Tom Brady would be the one. And I did throw a feeler out there. When I first saw the trade, I threw a feeler out there and tried to, in a 2-quarterback league, I put a trade out trying to,
that makes sense. Yeah.
In and it was like a 2 for 2, but I was, like I said, I was willing to take a chance if somebody was willing to trade Tom. But again, it was a home league, and the guy was a Tom Brady person, so it wasn't going to happen. But and like you said, all that being said, we won't talk about the stuff that come out today. But obviously now there's another thing above his head that, like you were saying, he might not even give us, round 3 or 4 at this point, even if nothing else happened. But now there's still that shot that somewhere down the line he could lose a week or 2 or more. Yeah. So I'm not trying to trade for him. No. I've seen a few people talk about it, that they've, offered or lowballed or got a low selling point for him, but I still think you're taking a chance. I don't
it depends on what you can sell him for or buy him for, rather. That's really all it comes down to, is if you can get him on the cheap and it's not really a huge hit to your roster that you can add him, sure, kind of see how it plays out. But other than that, I wouldn't be aggressively trying to buy him at this point. Right.
I would agree. Like I said, then non-fantasy wise though, man, it definitely puts the Patriots by far one of the favorites now. Super Bowl.
It has to. Yeah, it has to.
Well, it doesn't. Vegas put him right up there. So Vegas obviously saw that as a pretty big bump. So obviously that was the biggest news of the weekend, other than football itself. It was a pretty big story in fantasy or football world. And obviously, I think if it wasn't week 1, if it had been the week before, or maybe it had been week 2 or 3, everything that happened would have been even bigger, But the thing that I got out of this, though, is now when we start looking at football, the Raiders definitely surprised me. The Raiders did come out and played well. I don't know if this is the Raiders or if it's that Denver's not ready yet, though. I still think early in the year, it's hard to say yet. I know you're thinking like maybe I don't know. People think Denver's defense will be at least okay, but we don't know yet. Their offense struggled a little bit, but I don't know. Are the Raiders a good team, or was this just week 1 and they got an advantage over a team not prepared?
I think it's more of a week 1 thing. I'd be really surprised to see Derek Carr be able to adjust to being being forced to use a pseudo wide receiver 1 in Tyrell Williams. He's done it before in the past because we've seen Keenan Allen go in and out of the lineup when Tyrell Williams was still with Los Angeles.
Right.
So, so we've got that. We've got an unproven, we've got Darren Waller, the tight end, who, great story.
Yeah, I picked him up. I picked him up in two of my 4 leagues. I've got him.
Yeah. Hunter Renfrow, the rookie, and we've got another rookie in Josh Jacobs. So, it's just is Derek Carr capable of, really piloting that offense with so many?
He did it a couple years ago before the injury. I mean, they were headed to the Super. I mean, they were headed. Some people thought the Super Bowl when he got hurt 2 years ago was back, right? Didn't he hurt it back in like week 10? I mean, he was having a very good season that year. So
but he still had at least that. Well, I remember that that night that he hurt his back, because that was one of the nights that Amari Cooper actually performed well. So he still had like an established like wide receiver one on the team with him. So, I mean, with this team, I think this, at least to me, it looked like more of a statement game. I mean, I listened to the broadcast. I was doing some work at the time, and I remember listening to the broadcast for the game, and I couldn't go not 3 minutes without them mentioning Antonio Brown. Like the entire broadcast was all about like, well, what are they going to do? Like, they're doing so well without Antonio Brown. Like Derek Carr is like just overcoming all this adversity without having Antonio Brown.
Well, but I do think it helped them that he wasn't practiced all season. I mean, I think it was an advantage for them that they had already been practicing without him. I mean, they were already prepared by accident, I guess would be
pretty much, because if he wasn't there, it's not like they could include him in their game plans or have plays set up for him or anything like that. So I really don't think not having Antonio Brown was a huge thing. It's more of, can we see this continuing on down the line? And I think it was more about Denver being unprepared because they have so many weapons on the defensive side. I mean, they got Chubb. They still have who's the other edge rusher? Goodness gracious, the name escapes me at this point. Wears the glasses with racing chickens. And all that.
And does the commercials and
does the commercials and all that.
All of that. I know who you're talking about.
What I'm talking about.
He's a all-pro. Yeah. Even going to be a Hall of Famer.
But they can still have like Bradley Roby. They still have Chris Harris Jr. I mean, they still have so many, well-known pieces on that defense. I think it was more about them thinking that they could just roll over Denver, and they just weren't ready. And also they thought that their offense could at least put up some sort of fight, and neither side were ready. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can't believe I forgot him. But either way, I think it was more about Denver not being ready than anything else. I think it was less about Oakland being this new powerhouse offense and more about Denver just not being ready. Although I'm interested to see how Denver performs next week, considering they're playing Kansas. And Jacksonville, even with Gardner Minshew coming in for Nick Foles, Kansas City and the Jaguars, I think they combined to score 60 some odd points in that game. It was 40-26 or something like that.
Yeah, it was. Right.
So I still think that there are points to be had by Denver in week 2. So there could be an investment opportunity for fantasy gamers in week 2. But then past that, I don't know. I really don't.
Right. And Josh Jacobs, like I said, he's a rookie. I don't own him anywhere. We'll see. Again, one game isn't, enough yet. Which makes it fun. I was very active trading. I have learned in home leagues, I get active week 1 and try to buy a few players low that, people are already down on already. It doesn't take long in home leagues for people to get frustrated sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
So I was out there. I think I made got 3 trades approved today.
Nice.
So pretty active. But I won't go after rookies personally, and obviously him. He'd be a bot. Right now he'd go high. I would stay away. I'm looking for other guys. I'm looking for the low guys. And actually, if I had him, he would be someone I'd look to offer. Meaning, if I had drafted him, he went fairly high. That's why I don't own him anywhere for a rookie. But I definitely, give me the right wide receiver. If the Keenan Allen guy has other wide receivers that did good, I might offer Josh Jacobs for Keenan Allen if I was weak in wide receiver and already had 2 other running backs or something. I'm just saying that's the kind of thing I would look at. Now, like I said, that's the problem. We have so much to go over in an hour. It's going to be pretty hard. Other main injuries. Obviously, the next big one that just came out today was Hunter Henry, which was one of the top tight ends. Back to the same thing. That actually, I think, helps Allen. I think a lot of people had Allen down a little bit because they thought Hunter Henry was going to get more action, but now he's out of the mix there. And then Quincy Enunwa is now done, out for the season. Tyreek Hill is out for
6 weeks.
I'm saying less than 8, because if it was 8 or more, they'd have put him on IR, I'm assuming. So
right, yeah, more like 6 weeks. Yeah,
I mean, but the problem with the problem with these shoulder injuries are it could be 6 weeks, and they come out in that first game and hurt it again, and then they're out 6 more out season. We've seen that in the past. I've seen that before with wide receivers.
right.
And man, I wasn't going to bring it up here. I was going to save it for the a-hole hour. I am only because I was watching a lot of NFL films this weekend, just getting ready for the season to start and all that. And
I'm sure
it just wasn't that long ago that the guys wore shoulder pads. You're laughing, but it's the truth.
Right.
If you look at these old videos, the running backs have shoulder pads that are huge. Even the wide receivers have these. Are they as big as the running backs and the linebackers? No, but they're still 3 times the size of what they wear today. I'm sorry that no one's going to convince me that the lack of shoulder pads being worn now is not have some effect on some of these shoulder injuries that are taking place. And I even think concussions, I think it's hurting everything, because now you're hitting with a harder, bone / less padding, and you're hitting helmets, you're hitting other things. You're, with the shoulder, you're not hitting somebody's knee. I don't get it. I mean, I know the NFL says they want to be safe and all that, but then why not stipulate? These are big, strong athletes. It's really a shoulder pad that's a couple inches more. I understand, it will affect them a little bit, but these are big men. If they're all wearing the same thing, at least it's equal, in my opinion. I'm just not a fan that they're not wearing shoulder pads anymore, which is back to our other injury, which is Foles. Same thing. He gets lifted up, dropped down on a shoulder. Same problem. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we had 3 collarbones / clavicle. Is that the bone I want to say? All in that area. I think 3 of them just this weekend.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Yeah.
And I don't know. You for or against? You like that they don't wear shoulder pads anymore? I don't know. I'd rather see my guy stay healthy and maybe lose a 10th on his 40 time by having real shoulder pads. I don't know. Maybe I'm just old school, but
for a couple of them, I think it comes down to range of motion. So, like, for some of those guys, if they're not able to, lift their arm all the way up over their head because of the bulky shoulder pads.
But it would be equal. I get it that's the advantage. But Tyreek Hill right now can't lift anything over his head. That's my point. I'd rather have Tyreek Hill have it 2 inches less, reach, but be on the field for 16 weeks. That's all. I mean, I just think there's an advantage there, but
I don't know if that would have helped or not. I really don't. I don't know what the differences are between the shoulders.
It's like people still get concussions, but the helmets are better. It's not going to prevent them all, but we do have more of them than we used to, in my opinion. So
I don't know. I'd have to look at the stats for that, because it seems like just a I guess, for lack of a better term, like a bad rash of like all of a sudden clavicle injuries are happening all at once.
Right.
But I don't know if it's anything more or less than what it's been in recent years. I don't know.
All right. There we go. Something to study now. And then, like I said, so we have quarterback going out. Did I miss any major injury? I think those were
nothing major. Joe Mixon's nursing an ankle injury. We'll have to find out about that.
We do have all the little things. I think Mike Williams has a little bit of an issue. DeAndre Hopkins had a rib issue and didn't practice today. I think these are normal. Oh, I know. We forgot the running back, Geis.
Yeah, Geis.
That's a major one for fantasy.
Right.
For 2 people, obviously. I saw a lot of people drop Adrian Peterson, Saturday, when they said he was probably not going to play, and, to pick up other people. And obviously now this week he was a big waiver wire pickup, and they have announced he's starting now, right? Didn't they announce that he is going to be the starter?
I think so, but I don't see why people are picking him up, to be quite honest with you.
Because and we have this argument all the time, and I understand if you're a good player but if I have a bench spot and I have a starting running back on any team, I'll take that over, some handcuff, in my opinion. That's just the way I do it. I'd rather, I know people will argue the difference, but We would argue the difference. I would never, if it doesn't cost me anything but a bench spot in my average league that's 6 or 7 bench spots, I'm always going to put a starting running back down there over anybody else. I mean, I would take him. Yeah, Tyler Lockett missed practice today, and I know he only had 2 catches or 2 balls thrown at him, and one was a catch for a touchdown. So he's still, he does catch more touchdowns per pass, I think, now than anybody else, right? Last year, didn't he, every 5th pass was a touchdown out of 60 catches, and he's already so. But I think that's the biggest thing injury-wise that happened this week. I know here in Ohio, the big thing was Baker's wrist. Does it really hurt? Was it an excuse? Was it, what was going on there? And then
it seemed to me that, and I forget whose show I was listening to, but it seemed to be that after he suffered the wrist injury, I haven't gone back and watched that one on Game Pass yet. I was watching a couple of games while I was at dinner earlier tonight, but certainly after the wrist injury occurred, some of the problems with his passing started to crop up a bit more in that particular game, but I haven't seen it yet.
I have also listened to a podcast where there was a real NFL guy, and he said he went back and watched. He wasn't unconvinced that there wasn't a head injury and there wasn't some concussion issue, and that the Browns turned it into a wrist issue, because he even said some of the mistakes he made after the fact could have been, dizzy type reasons that things didn't go well versus a wrist issue. But because he said if you watch it, I could lie. You have Game Pass. I think he says 3 or 4 plays before the questionable wrist thing, he hit pretty hard head wise. And this guy even says if you watch it, I don't have it, so I didn't watch it. They said he was even convinced that he might have been knocked out for a split second. So he's saying the way he fell, that he thought it looked like, he was knocked out, and that the Browns, which would be against obviously every rule right now, concussion wise, that the Browns the Browns faded that to say it was a wrist problem, not a head injury issue, so that he could stay in the game. I don't have access to go back and do that without Game Pass, but maybe you'd want to look. I'd be curious, but I do know a podcast.
I'll check that one out tonight and see if I can get it.
And again, this wasn't a random podcast. This was one with this was an NFL guy that was on. Yeah. Talking that, like I said, that there is maybe a head thing going on. And again, I mean, that was pretty big news here that, the Browns got beat up pretty bad. I mean, that was for the most hype, and maybe that's just because we're in Ohio, by far the most disappointing team, I thought, for the weekend. Would you agree, or was there a team more disappointing than the Browns?
No. I mean, because I was really encouraged by what I saw by the Bengals. I actually just rewatched that game about a couple hours ago. But yeah, the Browns, they came out flat. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I mean, but really, I think that something that I think I'd mentioned a couple times on this show was that for the Browns, I mean, their offensive line, I mean, that's a huge problem.
Weakness, right?
Yeah, a huge problem for them, and it really showed on Sunday when Baker got sacked 4 times?
Right, he got hit a lot.
He got hit a lot. I mean, hurried throws. I mean,
didn't have time. I mean, Now, like I told somebody today where I work, there's somebody in a building beside me that I frequent. There's a football guy there. He's a Ravens fan. So obviously, he was
loving life.
Well, he was, but I did tell him the Bengals are, tied for second, but we are higher than the other two because we at least had a good game. Pittsburgh and the Browns both had very bad games. So I told him I'm putting the Bengals in second place right now. That's all I'm saying. I put the Bengals there, which now they said AJ Green was running today. That's pretty
out of the movie. That's good. Yeah.
That was encouraging. So I was pretty excited. That was big news.
Yes.
Because the Bengals offensively just look totally different. They look like what the Rams tried to start doing and then eventually did. I mean, that same kind of offense, a lot of passes. Andy Dalton threw more passes that game than he had any game in his career. He was fantasy, no one owned him. Even in in our 2-quarterback league, he wasn't on anybody's team.
No.
But as a Bengals fan, I enjoyed watching the game, and really they had a chance to win. I mean, they were, an extra.
I mean, if you want to compare Sean McVay disciples, I mean, what Zach Taylor is doing in Cincinnati is way better than what Matt LaFleur came out with in Green Bay on Thursday. I mean, Cincinnati had the highest passing rate in neutral game script. They passed at like 79% of their passes. I mean, came in like a neutral game script. I mean, so that means that's what Cincinnati wants to do. When the game is close, Cincinnati wants to pass. Now, it's not always going to be at like a 79, 80% rate, but they're going to be a pass first team. And that's what you want to see. I mean, even without AJ Green being there, even without Tyler Eifert really not being involved like early and often as we were hoping for. And even with Joe Mixon going down, I mean, of course, Gio Bernard is more of a pass catching back, but I mean, even with all these pieces kind of like removed from the field, I mean, they're still passing. It's not like they're like becoming a shell of themselves and becoming this conservative offense, similar to what Seattle is doing. So that's really encouraging.
It was. I was excited. And like I said, John Ross finally looked like somebody who you'd have drafted in the first round.
Yes, he's the Brandon Cooks equivalent. I mean, he's Brandon Cooks light to what Sean McVay would be doing if Sean McVay were in Cincinnati.
Right. And like I said, if they were all, and I said it before the season, I mean, I said it way back that if the Bengals stayed healthy, now that did not happen. We have line issues and all that. But if they stayed healthy, I thought we offensively would be the equivalent of the Rams, meaning we had 3 decent wide receivers, we had 2 decent running backs, and we had a quarterback that, to me, is capable of doing the same thing Goff is capable of doing. So, I just thought he had the weapons to run that type of offense. So, I don't know. I'm excited. And if obviously AJ Green comes back and they can still run that kind of offense, really huge. It would be. Now, injury wise, let's go there real quick. Injury wise, because Mixon got a little banged up. I don't think he practiced today. He says he's going to be ready Sunday, but I don't know that means he's going to be. Giovanni Bernard was. Again, I'm only in 4 leagues this year. He was owned in 2 and not owned in the other 2, and he went, last night. So, he definitely is a good pickup and might be a good pickup even if Mixon's healthy, if they're going to run that kind of offense and use him, back and forth. So, pretty big game for the Bengals fans. Again, I know the Jim Ross is out there in Maine and he's an Eagles fan, but he picked the Ravens to win that division, which obviously right now they're off to a good start and
looks pretty good.
I don't know. Again, it's too early. Was that an offense that no one was expecting? A defense that just was terrible? Or to me, I think that was a combination of the two. The defense wasn't capable and they weren't prepared. So I don't know. What did you think of that game? And obviously, fantasy-wise, it was a pretty big deal. And but except not a lot of their wide receivers were taken. Most of their wide receivers weren't starting. Even some of their running backs weren't top picks. I mean, Lamar Jackson wasn't started in some single quarterback 12. I heard a lot of podcasts today or over the weekend, Monday and Tuesday, of people saying, I had a lot of bench points because I had Lamar Jackson on my bench or whatever. So will we overplay them this week?
I don't know about that, but I do think that because the Ravens are playing Arizona. So with the way that Matthew Stafford was able to, wind up being the QB3, QB4 on the weekend, this past weekend, I think that there's a lot of room for a lot of like the repeat performances coming up this weekend. So yeah, if you were able to get your hands on Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews, somebody like that wasn't necessarily, drafted in your league, you should probably be able to pick at least Marquise Brown off the waiver wire and start him this weekend, like as a flex play. Mark Andrews, I'm somewhat down on right now, But either way, I think like if you have any of your Ravens, like start them, including the defense.
Well, they're in the chat room on YouTube. You can join. I didn't mention that. We are live on YouTube. So if you're listening to us live on Spreaker and you want to get in the chat room, you can go to YouTube. Look for all one word, A Fantasy Fan, and you'll find us. But in there, Jim Ross wants to know your thoughts on Conley. Everyone's low on him. Huh?
Chris Conley?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that like with his involvement in the Jaguars offense, I don't know if it was more of a revenge game like type of thing since he was, he came from KC and like now he plays for the Jaguars. But either way, I thought that his usage after Gardner Minshew like came into play was really encouraging. So like while I wouldn't try and like rely on him on a week to week basis, but I think if you have him and you're able to pick him up this week, like not put in a waiver claim for him, but like if you're able to just like go back in and just
a free agent pickup or something.
Yeah, just do like an FA pickup like afterwards, because that's the way I like to do a lot of my pickups is go in like after waivers have processed and
right.
a few people here and there. But if you're able to get them like for on the cheap, hold them this week, see how the offense looks with Minshew having the full week to prepare for their next game, and then kind of go from there. That's how I'd approach it.
I think they got a shot at looking better myself.
I think so, because Minshew, he's a good quarterback. He really is. I think he's a pretty decent quarterback. And I think that he's going to wind up being like that 6th round gem, like Tom Brady was, like almost.
Right, and that's where I was going, because everyone says, "Oh, if he was so good, he'd be." But people forget that Tom Brady was exactly this. I mean, he was just some 6th round pick. And we got what we got. So,
well, Minshew, he was a Heisman finalist. I mean, he wound up performing really well at Washington State. I mean, it was under Mike Leach. I mean, I think there's a lot to be encouraged by what he was able to do in college.
Right. In a 2-quarterback league, would you want him or Brissett? Brissett, I think, had a good week. I mean,
Brissett had a good week, but at least from the way that the offense wound up operating, the offense was still more like it was split more towards the run than the pass. That was not the case for the Jags. Pretty close, but still not the case.
Right. And then Jim Ross also wanted to know, he thinks Andrews should have been drafted. I mean, in most single tight end leagues, I'm not sure, he would have been at the bottom of that 10 to 15 tight end guy. You either, and some people took Graham instead of him, or some people, you never know. I mean,
my only concern with Andrews is that most of his work came later on in the game, like once it got out of hand.
Blown out.
Yeah. I mean, his first couple of targets, I think, came like when the game was close. But then, like, I would say 60 to 7% of his work, including the touchdown, I think came after. I think they were up by.
I mean, if they were both on the waiver wire, I'd have picked Waller all day long over Andrews.
Oh, easy. Yeah. That's an easy decision.
Yeah. All right. Again, because we have so much to do, because I want to get into now a little bit of time on next week's games. Any other? I guess. We still do have talk this week. Obviously, a few great games. The Saints.
That was such a good game. That was a fun game to watch.
And the fact it was a prime time or a game by itself, it was nice because you got to watch.
That should have been the last game. I would have preferred that. Like we slogged through the Denver Oakland game, and then have that game.
Exciting. I mean, that game wasn't horrible. I stayed awake.
I watched it, but still,
okay. I get it. We had a great game. Anything after that was going to be so. But the Raiders Broncos game still was close towards the end. I mean, there was a lot going on, but it was a very entertaining. I was surprised. A lot of times that second Monday night game is this. I'll fall asleep, but I stayed awake. And the other. Trying to think, there was another game. The Cowboys obviously did well. They had a big blowout, but I don't think anyone expected the Giants to be that good. But I don't think they expected. I thought we'd already talked about that. I thought Prescott was going to start well because he's got an easy schedule. But obviously, with Zeke coming back and all that, we thought he'd hand off more, but he still threw, and had a really, really good week. So any other game? I mean, I think that's it. I can't think of any other big game. Oh, I know. Minnesota only thrown the ball 10 times. which I think that is the second lowest number in like 40 years, some odd number, meaning, it's just not common in this era, to only
for a team to throw that little and still end up winning. Yeah.
I've heard both that's the way he wants to play anyway. From the time in Cincinnati, that is he does like, he's a defensive guy. So he wants the offense not to lose control of the ball. Right. Does this hurt Diggs and Thielen, or even if they're going to throw, assuming they're going to throw at least 20, because everyone's saying there's no way they'll do 10 again, but if they're 20, I think 18 of them are going to go those two guys, which, could be enough if they get a touchdown. But I would be worried if I had both of them, because Green Bay has a pretty good defense from their game.
Yeah.
I am really looking forward to that matchup. And we'll roll that into starting to talk about next week's games, because that's what I'm looking forward to see, is the Packers defense for real? Or is Minnesota have some issues and they still pulled out a win? What do you think about that game or that matchup?
Yeah, I think if you hold any of the Minnesota pass catchers, so Diggs, Thielen, then also Rudolph, probably should have cut Rudolph and found like one of the other like hot tight ends on the waiver wire this week. But if you have either of those two, at this point, I'd be if you haven't already tried to trade them, I would say like start looking in that direction. I mean, it's hard for me to think that Minnesota is going to go away from doing this. I mean, of course, the game was out of hand.
You would have to trade now. That's the problem. Any good player is not going to give you a high value. You might be able to, in a home league, sneak one of them in for somebody, but
you could package them with a running back and try to upgrade depending on how you got them. Yeah, and try to upgrade.
Because both of those were drafted in the fifth round in most cases. But
12-team leagues, I mean, Diggs, Thielen, they carried like third-round value in people.
Yeah. And I just, with good players, you're going to have trouble getting that out of them right at the moment. But the good thing is they are the only ones that are going to catch passes. So even if it is going to be, low throwing, at least those are the only two that's probably going to get the ball. We have the tomorrow night's game, the Panthers and the Buccaneers. I think both lost, so both have a lot of things to show us. Fantasy wise, both disappointed, both teams. So there's a lot of players on these two teams that I think people are hoping, that we have a good week out of them. So that either one, we can trade them or have some confidence in them. So that's our Thursday night game. So Jameis Winston, man, he didn't look good.
No. I mean, I haven't watched that. I haven't gone back to watch that game yet. From everything that I've heard, it wasn't just like inaccuracy. It was inaccuracy plus poor decision making plus the same things that we saw him doing a year ago, 2 years ago.
Well, but it's the same thing. It's another offense he has to learn. And it's just like he didn't pick it up enough. I mean, it's just like it, I don't know. He just seemed lost. So we'll see. I don't know what the Vikings Packers is a big game I want to see. I think the Lions lost, but ended up having a good showing. Stafford started slow, but had a good thing. So I'm kind of excited to see the Chargers and the Lions play. Obviously the Seahawks versus the Steelers, are the Seahawks better than we think, and the Bengals actually, played them well, or, was it that they're not that good, and now Pittsburgh, who really struggled, beats up on them? I'm kind of curious that one. When I looked earlier, there weren't the matchups that I thought there were. The Saints and Rams, I think, is probably, that to me is the number one game on the slate the whole week, I think, or should be.
Yeah.
Both teams won. Both teams have a lot of fantasy players on them. So I'm pretty excited to get into that.
Yep.
The Chiefs Raiders. Are the Raiders for real? What are the Chiefs going to do about Hill? So and week 2 is always fun. Like I said, week 1, I've already started doing trades. I started working on things like that before. Because once week 2 can seal some things, and now you can't get the trade through. I mean, you sometimes sell people. You're not lying and you're not deceiving anything. It's just, it's like Peyton Barber, I think they said is going to be the starter again, but Aaron Jones, I thought by far looked like the better running back.
Ronald Jones.
Aren't right. And I traded him today. I know he looked better, but I was willing to get out now. And flipped him. I'm trying to think. What do you have any? Buy low, sell high players that you've considered or you're looking at, or are you one of those that just kind of sits tight for a few weeks?
I would say that, definitely on Ronald Jones, if you can get him. The other one that I'm looking at right now, or just trying to like acquire or keep on my roster, would be Deebo Samuel. Dante Pettis not looking good with only playing like 2 snaps and I think getting a target. Either way, Deebo, I think with his skill set, he should be able to, I guess, take over Pettis's role, assuming Godwin still plays on the outside. So if you can acquire him and kind of hold on to him, because as of right now, most of the pass catchers for San Francisco are worthless, since that team didn't look like it could do anything last week.
Right.
And with their matchup this week, we could see more of the same, like when they play against Cincinnati, but we'll see. But either way, I'd be looking to see if you have a bench slot or a guy that you don't mind cutting, Deebo might be the one that you can pick up.
Well, it's even like that. I mean, Pettis in some leagues early in the drafting season was going the 4th, 5th, 6th round, and now he's being cut. That being said, I made an offer to buy him really low today, because I even when I texted the guy, I said, "Hey, you know what? Here's a trade offer. Before you cut this guy, I'd be interested." Because this guy drafted him in the 5th round. But he has a few other wide receivers. So I thought, well, maybe now he did text back and said, now I'm going to wait one more week and see before I drop him. But
sure.
Because, there's a lot of things going around that if he's even going to play much this next week. But I would still, even next week, I would take him low enough, with maybe somebody I would have cut anyway, or, something like that. But because he did the same thing last year, but he was a rookie, obviously. He came on at the end of the season. So who knows? I mean,
we could see, that whole offense might shift, but at least for as of right now, with everything that we heard throughout the offseason, Shanahan kind of being down on him. He also he was nursing an injury coming into this week. So, Deebo Samuel is healthy. He has this similar, if not better, skill set than Dante Pettis. So I think that at least from a price standpoint, it'd be easier for you to just pick up and stash Deebo Samuel versus trying to figure out what they're going to wind up doing with Dante Pettis.
Right. What about Miles Sanders? Would you buy him low right now? If someone,
I don't think you can really buy him low though. After he had one touchdown that was already called back, and he wound up sharing some of the workload with Jordan Howard and Darren Sproles. So for some reason, they were giving dump offs and handoffs to Darren Sproles still. But either way, I think the cat's kind of out of the bag with what Miles Sanders can bring to the team. But he
didn't do well this week. 25 yards or something like that.
But if he winds up, if that touchdown winds up counting, then we're singing a completely different tune. And a lot of folks that own Miles Sanders, they saw that. He was drafted in 80 or 90% of leagues.
That being said, I offered John Brown and Jalen Samuels for him. Now that's not necessarily buying low, but that would be 2 non-starters on my team for Miles Sanders, who I would make a starter. So I would, that was a trade.
I'd be surprised if that trade goes through.
Okay. The kid texted me back and said, I don't think I'm ready to give up on him yet, but I'm not ready to delete the trade. So that means he's at least thinking about it, because he has wide receiver problems. So he had AJ Green as his main wide receiver, and he's got a lot of receivers that didn't do anything. So, and hey, I'm willing to sell high on John Brown right now. And John Brown could be one of those you sell high and go, I should have kept him. But at the same time, I'm also willing to take John Brown, who I drafted in the 13th or 14th round. And if I could turn him into Miles Sanders, I would do that all day long. So
sure. Yeah.
But Miles Sanders is one of those that I was willing to throw out there. The other buy low that I did get a deal done today is I got Galladay from. Do I have that right? Galladay,
Kenny Galladay from Detroit.
Yep. Because again, I needed wide receiver help, and I made that. I got that. I might as well. I'll give you the details, like you care. But
let me know.
You're always good at telling me I screwed up, but I'm not the expert here. I'm just the guy that talks too much. Let me look, because this was because I had bad wide receivers. I took 2 zeros this week in a 3 wide receiver. And I still was in the game until till the late Monday night game. I actually had a shot at winning.
Wow.
And yes, I took 2 zeros. Davis got me 0. And man, my web's running slow. The deal I made happen today, I got Kenny Galladay and Darren Sproles for LaShawn McCoy.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a good deal. Yeah. I needed a wide receiver, and unfortunately, I have Williams.
Uh-huh.
I was going to struggle starting both of them. People were saying, "Oh, you could start both of them." I would have trouble on my roster starting 2 running backs from the same team. I get it that it's this potent offense, but if this offense struggles, I'm going to lose that week.
Sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would much rather start Damian Williams and now Kenny Galladay than Damian Williams and McCoy. So
yeah, I mean, it's not like it's the Saints from like 2 years ago where you could conceivably start like both running backs. I don't know if it's ever going to be that productive.
But even then, I would struggle doing that. I know what you're saying. You could have, but smart money says you shouldn't. I mean, so it just makes it hard. And that being said, I made a trade earlier in the day where I got LaShawn McCoy. So I actually got LaShawn McCoy this morning and traded him this evening. So he never even made my roster. Yeah. I got Kenyon Drake, LaShawn McCoy, Robert Woods for Ronald Jones, Devontae Parker, Tariq Cohen. To me,
okay,
three sell high guys.
Mm-hmm.
All 3 of my guys were sell high guys. And obviously, Kenyon Drake may not be anything, or in 2 weeks he could be their starter. I don't think we know. But obviously the main cog there was to get Robert Woods because I needed a wide receiver.
Got it.
Needed a wide receiver, and I obviously Robert Woods to me is going to be better than Devontae Parker over the long haul. And but then, like I said, then I flipped. And I did that trade assuming I was going to flip either Damian Williams or LaShawn McCoy. I figured I could flip one of them. I was not going to, but the kid I was making the trade with, he was the same way. He was stacked at running back, and he said same thing. I can't start McCoy over my other starter. So,
true. Yeah.
It worked out, and he had no, and like I said, so he was willing to take Ronald Jones and Tariq Cohen because he felt he could start both of those versus McCoy. So we'll see.
Yeah.
So, that was my 2 deals in this league today. And like I said, but I am, because I enjoy that. I would rather trade a bunch and lose. And I know there's people out there that know that the goal is to win, and I get it. But if I'm bored all season, I don't know. So fun for me. I have made my team with 3 trades in 24 hours. My team's much better than it was when I started.
That's all that matters.
Because, like I said, I literally, I was the 3rd worst scorer of the week. And I played the 4th worst score of the week. I only scored 159 points. So, because Anthony Miller and Corey Davis both got me zeros in my league. So I was starting Corey Davis, Anthony Miller, and John Brown. Those were my 3 wide receivers that I started.
Okay.
So obviously I was not strong at wide receiver. And now this week I'm going to be starting Robert Woods and Kenny Golladay. That's pretty big difference.
Yeah.
And I'm still starting my main 5. I'm still starting Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson. I'm still starting Todd Gurley and Damian Williams. And I'm still starting Travis Kelce. So my team got the only weakness I had was wide receiver. And I obviously made that better, And to me, that's what you do these first week or two. Some of these trades would have never happened 3 weeks down the road or 4 weeks down the road when somebody goes, Devontae Parker had one great week, Now, I'm not one of these trade people. We've talked about that. Once the trade's over, I'm done. I hope the guy goes to the Super Bowl with my guys. I don't look back and go, and it doesn't even matter if they do good or bad for me. I don't care. It's like poker. Once you push that money in the middle, I detach quickly, And I'm that way in fantasy. Once I make a trade, I'm done. I tell the guy good luck, and because I have people come back to me like 4 weeks later and go, I've been watching, and the guys I gave you are awesome, and the ones you gave me, I'm like, and I'll go, I didn't know that. I don't watch your guys. I'm not watching the guys I traded you. I don't care anymore. They're not my guys. So and I always do. Trading's easier if the guys you trade somebody actually work out. I've always said if I want it to work out, so the guy will trade with me next time. Because my goal is always to make my team better, even if I get up a little more in the trade. Now, almost all my trades are going to be fair. I'm not going to steal too many people, and I'm not going to give anybody away. But at the same time, I'm never making a trade that doesn't make me better.
Sure. Yeah.
Now I say that the trade this morning to get McCoy, knowing I was going to trade him, to me was a way to make my team better. I actually took a guy wasn't going to play, but I could, I made a pretty good deal on, and to get Woods, so I was able to flip that. But it makes it fun. I don't know. I just like that's part of the game I enjoy.
Sure.
Any other things coming up this week that you want to talk about? Any game, anything? Who's the Monday night game? Unfortunately, is a poor ESPN. I don't know if it's their fault but the Browns and the Jets. I don't know. I mean, that just.
That could be good. At least from a fantasy standpoint, I know folks.
The Jets look better than we thought, right? The Jets looked better than we thought. They ended up losing.
No, they didn't.
Huh?
No, they didn't. Like Sam Darnold did not look good.
Okay, Sam Donald didn't.
Le'Veon Bell.
I guess what I'm saying is that game was better than I thought. The Buffalo Jets game, was it wasn't 16-18. It wasn't even that big of a game. I don't know. I enjoy a defensive game, and maybe that's what I'm thinking. Defensive wise, both Buffalo and the Jets.
Defensive, yeah, absolutely. Offensively,
yeah.
Josh Allen fumbled, I think, in the first quarter. If it wasn't a fumble, it was a pick six, one of the two. I know he fumbled once, and there was a pick six.
Right.
But yeah, just a lot. Good defensive game, absolutely. But offensively, I don't think either side until like the third and fourth quarter when. John Brown and Josh Allen started to click when I don't know from Sam Darnold's side. I don't know. I'm trying to understand where some of that short or even intermediate to deep passing was that we started to see towards the end of last season because it regressed. Now that could have just been from the pressure because Bill's front seven is one of the best in the league, and their secondary is also really good. So now, I'm wondering if that was part of it.
Now, the other thing is, can the Patriots score 70 points or more? Can the Patriots get to 70 points on the Dolphins this week?
No, it's not going to be that bad. But I think it'll be maybe.
But I don't think Belichick will stop scoring. I really don't. I don't believe he doesn't normally do it anyway. He does not pull off the dogs very often, but he's going up against a coach that left him and took other coaches. So I do think there's something. I don't think Bill Belichick will have an issue if he could score 70. He will. That would be my thing. And I think the Vegas have them. I think right now it's like they're given 17 points, which is pretty big in the NFL these days. I think they said 17 points.
It was like 18. I thought it was like 18 and a half or 19.
I heard 17 and a half earlier today.
Yeah, I think it took like a slight dip like last night once the AB news came out. But other than that, I mean, yeah, it's just a massive line in their favor. Either way, I mean, the only other, like, my only concern, and this is like just straight narrative based, is that one, for some reason, the Patriots, they seem to struggle like when they play down in Miami, and then also two, whenever Belichick plays like his like past coordinators, they always seem to struggle. I mean, again, all narrative based.
I know, right?
But just the way that the state of the Miami's offense and defense, right. I just don't see any way how they wind up losing this one.
I agree. I don't think they're going to lose, but I'll be curious what they score. Yeah. We only have a few minutes. I just wanted to go over quickly. Just scoring leaders this week. Running backs in order. McCaffrey, and this is I pulled up a half point PPR, so that it's kind of going to be similar for everybody. But McCaffrey, Eckler, Cook, Mack, Ingram, Henry, Jacobs, Johnson, Chris Carson, and Kamara, and then Barkley. What I find strange here is you have McCaffrey, who was taken early in the first round, then a bunch of guys that were taken in the second, third, and fourth round, and then you get down to about 12 and 13 before you get to two more first round guys. So on this list, the one if I had Derrick Henry, I'd be selling him. I don't own him anywhere because I'm not a fan. But
no, me too. Yeah, sell him.
He only had, we had the one long catch for 75 yards and a touchdown. I think they said he only had like 3 quality touches in the whole game, even though he finished with a lot of points for fantasy.
Sure.
But, kind of unique there. At wide receiver, darn, Sammy Watkins, Deshaun Jackson, John Ross, Marquise Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, John Brown, DJ Clark, Larry Fitzgerald, Amari Cooper, Tyrell Williams. I mean, again, the same thing. There's a lot of middle range draft picks in there for fantasy that are at the top of that list. And, DeAndre Hopkins was probably the first taken off in most drafts. Sure. But he's really the only one you see up there that was a first round pick. Yep. To see Larry Fitzgerald up there, I think was pretty cool. DJ Clark, I don't know, was that a fluke? Was that a fluke, or will we see more from him in Jacksonville?
We could see more. I mean, it seemed like, again, with Conley was clicking with Minshew. I think Chark was clicking with Minshew. Westbrook was clicking. I mean, we could see, all three of them like continue to perform well, like even with this like massive change in quarterback. So I don't see much of a reason to. If you picked them up off waivers, just like kind of came in and just picked them up like after waivers processed. Cool, hold them, see how it works out.
But again, sell high wise. Again, a lot of these guys on this list, there's a few that probably you can't sell high on because you didn't have them. In Ohio, most people, John Ross is on most rosters that I saw in Ohio. If I had John Ross, I'd be selling him. Not that he couldn't have a great season, but AJ Green, especially with that boot coming off today, I'd have been pumping. As soon as I saw that boot came off and then he was running, I'd have been putting John Ross, out there pretty quickly and try to get something for him. So we'll see. Deshaun Jackson amazed me. I thought, I watched a lot of that game. That looked good. Obviously, Sammy Watkins, healthy. We've always known he has the ability. He was healthy. Obviously, Hill went out, but that went well. Cooper and Gallup on the same team are up in the top 12 is pretty cool. Again, is that just who they played? Did that have something to do with Dak? I think it's the easy schedule.
Part of it, yeah.
So that's pretty neat. Danny Amendola.
Amendola.
Yeah, Amendola. Yeah, had a pretty good game with Detroit. Who is the number 2 in New Orleans?
Tre'Quan Smith.
All right, but Ted Ginn had more more fantasy points.
For right now, it's Ted Ginn. He had been starting ahead of Traquan Smith in 2 wide receiver sets throughout the preseason, so I wouldn't be surprised to continue to see that occur for at least the next 2 to 3 weeks. But I think throughout the course of the entire season, I can see Traquan taking over.
Right, and then quarterback we had Prescott, Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, Keenum, Brady, Carson Wentz, Matthew Stafford, which again, my son had Matthew Stafford in a 2-quarterback league. And at the first half, he's going, I'm cutting him. I should have never drafted Stafford. I should have gone with Andy Dalton. He had all this stuff. And then TNA, he goes, I might keep it because I think he ended up with just over 400 yards even, didn't he? Or right close to 400.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It was all said and done. He goes, maybe Stafford will be okay. 385 yards. So actually on this list, which is kind of amazing, I guess it's all scoring because of the lack of touchdowns. Andy Dalton had the most yards at 418. The only other 400-yard guy was Dak Prescott.
Yep.
All those guys in the top 12 were over 300 except for Deshaun Watson. He ended up at 268. And again, I told you I was in a close match. I needed that game to be tied. When that guy missed, I was so excited. I was jumping up and cheering like, man, I got a shot at winning this week with 2 zeros. I still could win because I have him on the team. I have Watson, and I was like, this would be great. I just need him to go into overtime and maybe get over 300 to get me the bonus and maybe get a touchdown. I mean, anything was possible at that point.
Sure.
And then, and that's because that kicker misses that was all because he misses the extra point. I'm like, they tied it. This is awesome. This is great. And then they call the penalty on the roughing the kicker, and then he kicks it. I went from so much joy to like, oh man, I needed that overtime to get him over 300. But that's the fun of football. You don't get that. And I love baseball, but you don't get that in baseball. You don't get that in fantasy basketball either. It's that, those 1 and 2 big plays just, and things that can happen in a game that just make it so much more fun, I think, on a Sunday afternoon. But
hope so.
Ryan, Eli Manning to me didn't look as bad as I thought he did last year. Now, again,
I haven't watched that one yet.
It's one game. So we'll see. And obviously Brissett's down there a ways, but he did fairly well. Russell Wilson's way down there, under 200 yards in a game they won. I don't know. I think he went drafted way too high in most home leagues. So
yeah,
I'm excited for another week. I'm excited to get it started tomorrow. Got one. Well, the league we're in, the waivers are going on and the fab budgets. There's been some moves today in that league. There was a lot of people dropped in leagues. So if you don't forget to set your waiver wire again tonight in some leagues or tomorrow with some of these players that got dropped. There are in home leagues, especially, there's a lot of good players that got dropped.
Overreaction Monday, man. That's happening all the time.
So, if you didn't use your waiver wire and or if you think you can get them off a free agent, pay attention to some of the people that got dropped. So I'm pretty excited. Anything else football wise? Because it does look like it's dark now in Utah, Omaha, Africa. Where are you at again?
Utah. I'm just outside of Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City. There's no football in Utah, is there?
No,
isn't BYU out there? And and I think the University of Utah is out there. I think. I think.
I mean, there wouldn't be University of Utah anywhere else.
I think there is a Utah. Well, there could be sometimes. Sometimes you'll hear that you'll go, oh, is that in the state? Oh, no, we're in a different state, but the name is that way. But
okay.
In colleges, that's not actually. I'm trying to think. There's a couple of them that the name of because states are named, some of them after things that are not just the state. So the college could be named after it, but never mind. Right. I might be making that up. Chris, anything else?
I think that's it. Just waiting for week 2 to begin, and let's dive in.
Just excited. All right. I tried to talk less, or at least not give as much information, because I did. I got called out. Now on the A-hole hour, I called out the a-hole that called me out. Because someone, like I said, now the a-hole people said it's because I must be famous now because I have a troll. And that's how you know that you're important now, is when someone trolls you a little bit. Mm-hmm. But because we do the sit start show, me and Lou on Sunday, someone questioned that. Why would they ask me a sit start question? Well, I tried to explain. You text me at a fantasy fan the question so that then I can ask Lou. I'm not the guy going to answer the question. Lou does that. Now, I will give my, me, I will give my opinion a little bit. Well, this person questioned my ability to answer a question. And I had to tweet back. I said, the name you tweeted, my Twitter name is a fantasy fan. Uh-huh. I am not hiding behind, at knows all kinds of shit about fantasy. I'm not at, I'm a football genius. I'm not at, I am at a fantasy fan.
Sure.
So that's enough, I feel, for someone to understand who they're about to ask a question to. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if I'm going to text Chris Allen or tweet him, and I realize that it's, fantasy football weather guy, I have no problem texting him with a weather question because that's in the Twitter name.
Yeah.
But the fact that this person called me out, and like I said, I don't even answer the questions. Now, I do have to go grade tonight all Lou's answers. I do grade Lou's answers and then play back how well he did the next Sunday.
Okay.
But I don't know. I did have to call that person out for questioning why he would want to send me a question, So
okay. All right.
And you can ask me any question and I will bring it up to Chris or somebody like that. But
of course.
Man, you've been doing this 2 years. I do think outside the box sometimes. So at least if somebody wants my opinion, I will give it to you, because sometimes I go out of left field. I'll come at it a different angle. Yeah. It works out. Sometimes it doesn't, but that's to me the fun of fantasy. There's more than one way. So
absolutely.
So don't call me out anymore. I'm at a fantasy fan. That's how damn simple can it be, Chris?
Yeah.
Chris? Where can they find you? Do you got any work coming out this week?
So I've already got 2 articles out this week. I had the my streaming article for 444 streaming quarterbacks piece that dropped yesterday, and then also I took a look at candidates, like drop candidates, like from your roster. So I went through and looked at snap counts, target share, and things of that nature in order to come up with some drop targets. It's a little early in the season to call it quits on some players, but there are some that are just like, yeah, it's probably time to take a look at some of the other players that could be on the waiver wire. Geronimo Allison, some of those other guys. Also got those.
Someone in my league dropped Geronimo Allison. I don't know. I'm not saying, for better people, maybe, but I got to tell you, if I can give you, I won't give up a waiver spot for him, but if no one picks him up, I would take him off free agency. And a team, if I was a little weak in wide receiver, again, 1 week, they were drafted, him and Scantling, what's the other guy?
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
They were drafted together. So, meaning every draft I did, you saw their names right back and forth. ADP, they were together. 1 week shouldn't change that yet. I'm sorry. It shouldn't. I know
40% snap share and 0 targets in a game where they were trailing. I can't do it. I can't do it.
You need bigger benches in your leagues. You're always too damn scared.
Why keep a slot receiver on a team?
I'm sorry. I'm still willing to wait another week or two to see if I maybe get lucky and have the number 2 with Aaron Rodgers. That's all.
With Marquise Brown out there, with Terry McLaurin out there, with all these other wide receivers.
At a fantasy fan, damn it, and I'm a fan of doing what I want to do.
You do you, man.
I did drop Gronk though. I dropped Gronk and got Waller.
There, you listened to me. There, I like that.
I did. I didn't like that I listened, but I did.
Proud of you,
Chris. Say goodnight.
Good night.
This has been Just a Fantasy Fan Podcast. And to keep your fantasies going, follow us at justafantasyfan.com. Say good night. Good night.